Good morning. My name is Danielle, and I am the Community Engagement Specialist here at the Turning Point Rape Crisis Center. If this is your first Empowered Education presentation, make sure to go and check out our other ones after this presentation. I'm so glad that you found us today. Also, make sure to turn our post notifications on. We have Motivational Mondays, we have Empowered Education Thursdays, and we have Film Fridays. Now, Motivational Mondays are at 9 a.m. on Monday. We have Empowered Education at 10 a.m. on Thursday, and then we have Film Friday at 2:30 p.m. on Friday. So make sure to check us out. So today we are ending our Powerful Men series, and to end this series, I wanted to kind of delve into more of a different side of sexual violence. So we first talked about Bill Cosby. We talked about Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby. These were people who used their positions in power to impact women through sexual violence, to be able to say, oh, well, I'm giving you money for this, so now you have to do this thing. And so now we're going to talk about the more complex side of sexual violence and talking about age and that kind of deal. So with Elvis Presley, we're going to be talking about his marriage to Priscilla, and then we're also going to be talking about Woody Allen and his molestation allegations with his adopted daughter, um, Dylan. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is our presentation. It takes you to T. It's a bystander's guide on being empowered and educated, because once we're educated about the problem, we can be the change to fix it and support survivors along the way. Here at the Turning Point, we have a 24-hour crisis hotline, which is 1-800-886-7273. And at that number, you can call to get scheduled for counseling. You can have any questions you have around sexual violence answered, and you can also schedule a SANE exam. So that goes into the things that we offer. So we offer free counseling for survivors of sexual violence and their friends and family members. We also provide advocacy, which is where we go into the hospital and we support survivors during their sexual assault nurse examination. Lastly is this, education, where we go into the community and different online platforms and spread awareness about sexual violence, its roots and its causes, and hope that you be the change to fix it. So our mission is to highlight the impact of sexual violence on individuals and our community through education programs that foster hope, encourage change, and prevent sexual violence. Join us in the fight against sexual violence. The Turning Point is committed to reducing the prevalence of sexual violence in our community. We firmly believe that for this change to occur, each person has a responsibility and must do their part to end and prevent sexual violence. So, powerful men. We're going to be starting with Elvis Aaron Presley. He's also known simply as Elvis. He was an American singer, musician, and actor. He is regarded as one of the most significant cultural icons of the 20th century and is often referred to as simply the king of rock and roll or simply the king. So he notoriously had an he notoriously had an affinity for young girls. So the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, was a pedophile and had girlfriends as young as 14 years old when he was on tour at the age of 22. The shocking revelation was made in a new book titled Elvis Presley, A Southern Life. The author of the book, Joel Williamson, has said that the singer kept a group of 3 14-year-old girls with him on tour who were up for pillow fights, tickling, kissing, and cuddling, according to Vice. Elvis Presley, A Southern Life, also mentions multiple episodes of Elvis engaging young girls to perform for him by mud wrestling in white panties and spying on couples having sex in one of his Hollywood houses by installing a two-way mirror in a bathroom. The book alleges that Elvis was engaged in romantic connections with a string of underage women, including his wife Priscilla. The couple met in Bad Nauheim, Germany during his stint in the army when Priscilla was just 14 years old. The book claims that Elvis, on their first night, made love to her in every way short of penetration. It was as if Priscilla's virginity was another thing that Elvis strangely and sorely needed to maintain. So, according to Alan Fortas, an all-Memphis football halfback who became a bodyguard and part of the Presley entourage, said Elvis needed someone to baby more than he needed a sex partner. He craved the attention of someone who adored him without the threat of sexual pressure, much as a mother would. Furthermore, Elvis befriended some of the young girls who used to cluster adoringly in his driveway or outside the fence. Some of the girls were as young as 14. Fortas said they were frequent house guests who attended his concerts as part of Elvis's personal traveling show. Out in the backyard, they romped with Elvis in the Doughboy pool and challenged him to watermelon seed spinning contests. They also slipped into his bedroom for rambunctious pillow fights. Sometimes they would sit cross-legged with him in bed, flipping through his fan magazines or admiring his stuffed animal collection. Often they would all lie down together and cuddle, and what went on was horseplay, not foreplay. Therefore, Guralnick writes that for the more experienced girls, um, it wasn't like with other Hollywood stars or even with other more sophisticated boys they knew. Although they offered to do things for Presley, he wasn't really interested. What he liked to do was lie in bed and watch television and eat and talk all night. So that's a different account of his affinity and love for having young girls around him. Now, going back to this, if you watched our R. Kelly presentation and our film Friday that was aligned with it, we saw different situations of bodyguards who knew what was happening and found their own way to validate what was happening or say that it was innocent or not as bad as it actually was. So keep that in mind as we go through these slides. So now let's get into Priscilla. So Priscilla Presley. Elvis and Priscilla met in 1959 while Elvis was stationed in Germany with the U.S. Army. Priscilla was 14 years old when Elvis met her. Elvis's relationships with young women were pointed in his love life by Reuben Fine, who observed that Elvis quickly became attached to teenage girls, and he loved to have them wearing white panties in bed with him. For a long time, he would not have sex with them, whom he described as jailbait. In similar terms, Brent D. Taylor has stated that Elvis's closest female relationships were usually with young girls of around 13 or 14, ending as they reached late teens. So once they started to age up, then he would no longer have a relationship with them. He didn't have sex with these young girls, but had pajama parties, pillow fights, and indulged in girl talk, just like he did with Gladys. As a perpetual youth, Elvis was attracted to young women, and Elvis felt comfortable with these adolescent girls because he was so insecure. That's why he needed younger girls. Elvis biographer Alana Nash also confirms that the singer had a predilection for young adolescent girls. The author says that Presley was overly attached to his mother and could not relate normally to mature women. Presumably, Presley sought out very young girls because he felt threatened by women who were older. Another component to this is when you look at this, he said he described them as jailbait. And so in describing them as jailbait, then he knew that they were too young to be hanging around him, laying in his bed in their underwear, kissing and doing other things besides having sex. And I think that sometimes perpetrators can have this line that's like, oh, okay, well, this is what's illegal, but everything under this is not illegal. And that's not necessarily the case when you're dealing with underage kids. So, Priscilla Presley. In 1962 or 1963, Elvis managed to talk to the understandably reluctant, I do not know how to say Priscilla's maiden name, but her parents, into allowing their teenage daughter to live with his father, Vernon, and stepmother, Dee Presley, at a home Elvis purchased on Hermitage Drive in Memphis, located at the back of Graceland. So Elvis convinced Priscilla's parents to have her move into a home that was virtually like a guest house on his land. So he had access to her at all times while she was underage. And this was something I remember going to Graceland and listening to different things. And a lot of times, parents at first would think it was cool, like, okay, yeah, like my teenage daughter is getting to hang out with a celebrity. But then as time went on, they got uncomfortable with him hanging around their child and would eventually pull away. Now, Priscilla's parents, on the other hand, did allow her to go and live with him or on his property. So, however, that arrangement lasted only a matter of weeks. Priscilla slipping back and forth between Vernon's house and Graceland. So, Graceland is where Elvis lived. In her 1985 autobiography, Elvis and Me, written by author Sandra Harmon, Priscilla describes Presley as a very passionate man who is not overtly sexual towards her. According to her account, the singer told her that they had to wait until they were married before having intercourse. He said, "I'm not saying we can't do other things, it's just the actual encounter. I want to save it." Priscilla says in her autobiography that she and Elvis did not have sex until their wedding night. However, this claim is questioned by Suzanne Finstad. So, they married in 1967 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and daughter Lisa Marie was born 9 months later on February 1st, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. In her book, Elvis and Me, Priscilla describes her daily life with her husband. She also says that Presley became fascinated with the occult and metaphysical phenomena and was addicted to prescription drugs, which dramatically changed his personality from playful to being passive and introverted. The Presleys separated on February 23rd, 1972 and divorced on October 9th of 1973. Agreeing to share custody of their daughter. Freudian and other sexual psychologists say that Presley had a classic example of a mother-Madonna whore split, and he adored his mother and never recovered from her early death. And he met Priscilla when she was 14, and she became a mother at 23. It's said that Elvis never had sex with her again after the birth of his daughter and would never have sex with a woman who had a baby. That was something that he told Priscilla on their wedding night. He did not remarry after his divorce from Priscilla and did not have any more children. However, Priscilla Presley states in her autobiography that they did have sex again after the birth of their daughter. So on their wedding night, he had expressed his concern over having sex with someone after they had had a baby. But she says in her autobiography that they did have sex again. But the component of this that's very interesting is that he found her when she was really young, and then after they got married, after intimacy occurred, their relationship and their marriage fell apart shortly after, which is very interesting, especially with his history with young women. And once they get older, him losing interest in them. I know that I can't remember where I read it, but there was a time since Priscilla was getting older before they got married, he had promised Priscilla's parents that he would marry her whenever he moved her onto his property. And as she got older, he started to kind of want to back out of that, but her parents were having it, and so he had to go through it. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about Woody Allen. So the Elvis Presley side of things is very much something that we can see more common in today's society, where you have people who are on social media who will be waiting for young pop stars and things that become of age so that they can be with them, or they start talking to them or being their friend when they're 16, and then when they turn 18, magically, oh, they're in a relationship, but they were never romantic prior to their 18. When they turned 18, we see this with, Kylie Jenner and Tyga. They started seeing each other when she was 16 years old, but they started dating officially when she was 18. And so a lot of this we see in our media, we see this a lot that's normalized on platforms like Twitter and being like, oh, how many days until she's 18? That behavior is not acceptable and normal to sexualize young teens and basically have a countdown for when they are of legal age. So now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about Woody Allen. The reason we have two today is because these cases are a lot shorter than with Bill Cosby or Epstein or anyone else where it's or Harvey Weinstein, where we had like 50 different women in different cases where we can talk about the court case and all of that. This is more of what we see in our society where it's hard to, you can see something and say, oh, that isn't right, but then there's no actual criminal charges placed or there is no criminal conviction. So let's get into Woody Allen. Woody Allen is an American director, writer, actor, and comedian whose career spans more than 6 decades in multiple Academy Award-winning movies. So this is a little complicated, so make sure to pay attention. So Woody Allen and Mia Farrow began a 12-year relationship in 1980, during which Farrow starred in 13 of his films. They maintained separate apartments in Manhattan throughout the relationship, Farrow on Central Park West and Allen on Fifth Avenue, and they did not marry. They had both been married twice before. When the relationship began, Farrow had 7 children. So 3 biological sons from her marriage with composer Andre Previn, and 3 adoptive girls, 2 Vietnamese and 1 Korean, and then 1 adoptive Korean boy, Moses. And then in July of 1985, she adopted Dylan Farrow from Texas. Allen was not involved in the adoption, but when Dylan arrived, he assumed a parental role with her and began spending more time in Farrow's home. He and Farrow went to Europe several times with the Farrow and Previn children between 1987 and 1989. Although the judicial investigation concluded that he remained aloof from Miss Farrow's other children except for Moses, to whom he was cordial, in 1987, Farrow gave birth to Allen's biological son, Satchel, later known as Ronan, and Farrow wanted to adopt another child in 1991. Allen said he would not take a lousy attitude toward it so long as she agreed to his adoption of Dylan and Moses. And in October that year, she adopted another Vietnamese child. Allen's adoption of Dylan and Moses was finalized in December 17th of 1991. Okay, so Allen adopted Dylan and Moses. So Mia and Woody share Dylan and Moses as adoptive children. There we go. So on August 4th, 1992, Allen visited his children at Farrow's County home in Connecticut while Farrow and a friend went shopping with the 2 most recently adopted children, Tam and Isaiah. Farrow and Allen were to sign an agreement on August 6th that Allen would pay $6,000 a month for the support of Dylan, Satchel, and Moses. Martin Welts, Farrow's lawyer, said that on August 4th, Farrow called him to suspend the processing of the agreement. Present in the house once Farrow had left were Dylan, Satchel, Farrow's babysitter, Christy, the children's French tutor, Sophie, and Farrow's friend's 3 children, and Farrow's friend's babysitter, Allison Strickland. When Farrow left the house, Moses was, according to her, off by himself taking a walk. Moses claims he was in the house when Allen arrived. The day after the visit, Strickland told her employer that she had seen Allen kneel on the floor in front of Dylan, then age 7, with his face in her lap, turned towards Dylan's body. She testified to that effect during the custody trial. The judge, after hearing Strickland's testimony, did not believe that she was describing any kind of abuse or inappropriate behavior. Dylan allegedly told Farrow that what had happened. She allegedly told Farrow what had happened and that she had not liked it. Vera telephoned her attorney for guidance and was advised to take Dylan to her local pediatrician. Vera took Dylan to the pediatrician, to whom the girl did not make any report of abuse. According to the expert Vera hired, Farrow had videotaped Dylan answering her questions before the second visit to the pediatrician, and Dylan had made the allegation of abuse in fits and starts and in a way that set a tone for a child about how to answer. And Dylan told Farrow that she had been with Alan in the attic and that he had touched her private parts. The following day, they returned to see Caveron, and Dylan repeated the allegations. Caveron then told informed authorities, although he had no physical evidence of sexual molestation, Caravan later told an interviewer that he was required by state law to report any allegations of child abuse. Coates informed Allen of the allegation during one of the sessions in which he was participating in Satchel's therapy. He responded, "I'm completely flabbergasted," and repeated it several times. So this is Dylan Farrow's open letter, and this is how we'll close today. So when I was 7 years old, Woody Allen took me by the hand and led me to a dim closet-like attic on the second floor of our house. He told me to lay on my stomach and play with my brother's electric train set. Then he sexually assaulted me. He talked to me while he did it, whispering that I was a good girl, that this was our secret, promising that we'd go to Paris and I'd be a star in his movies. I remember staring at that toy train, focusing on it as it traveled in its circle around the attic. To this day, I find it difficult to look at toy trains. For as long as I can remember, my father had been doing things to me that I didn't like. I didn't like how often he would take me away from my mom, siblings, and friends to be alone with him. I didn't like it when he would stick his thumb in my mouth. I didn't like it when he would get in bed, when I had to get in bed with him under the sheets when he was in his underwear. I didn't like it when he would place his head in my naked lap and breathe in and breathe out. I would hide under the bed or lock myself in the bathroom to avoid these encounters, but he always found me. These things happened so often, so routinely, so skillfully, hidden from a mother that would have protected me had she known, that I thought it was normal. I thought this was how fathers doted on their daughters. But what he did to me in that attic felt different, and I couldn't keep that a secret anymore. When I asked my mother if her dad did what Woody Allen did to me, I honestly did not know the answer. I also didn't know the firestorm it would trigger. I didn't know that my father would use his sexual relationship with my sister, because Woody Allen did, in fact, have a relationship with Dylan Farrow's sister, and then he ended up marrying her. So this was not one of the siblings with whom he adopted. This was his partner at the time's adoptive daughter, who he formed a relationship with and then later went on to marry. He would use his sexual relationship with my sister to cover the abuse he inflicted on me. I didn't know that he would accuse my mother of planting the abuse in my head and call her a liar for defending me. I didn't know that I would be made to recount my story over and over again to doctor after doctor, pushing to see if I'd admit I was lying as part of a legal battle I couldn't possibly understand. At one point, my mother sat me down and told me that I wouldn't be in trouble if I was lying, that I could take it all back. I couldn't. It was all true. But sexual abuse claims against the powerful stall more easily. There were experts willing to attack my credibility. There were doctors willing to gaslight an abused child. After a custody hearing denied my father visitation rights, my mother declined to pursue criminal charges despite findings of probable cause by the state of Connecticut due to, in the words by the prosecutor, the fragility of the child victim. Woody Allen was never convicted of any crime that he got away with. What he did to me haunted me as I grew up. I was stricken with guilt that I had allowed him to be near other little girls. I was terrified of being touched by men. I developed an eating disorder. I began cutting myself. That torment was made worse by Hollywood. All but a precious few, my heroes, turned a blind eye. Most found it easier to accept the ambiguity and to say, who can say what happened, to pretend that it was nothing. So I want to end there because tomorrow we have our Film Friday presentation where we're going to hear Mia Farrow's interview, and we're also going to hear Priscilla Presley's interview on their experience. So Priscilla Presley's experience with Elvis during the courting stage, and then also we're going to be listening to Dylan Farrow's experience of her sexual abuse allegations and really get to amplify their voices. So make sure you tune in tomorrow at 2:30 to check that out. And also give this video a like, leave a comment, and share if you care. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.